International Business, Masters of Commerce, second semester, Mangalore University, session 4. In this session, you're going to learn the tariff and non tariff barriers. Learning objective to learn about the concept of instruments of trade policy. Session outcome the students are able to distinguish between the tariff and non tariff barriers, understand the administrative barriers to trade, understand the role of subsidies in the world trade. Free trade. Free trade is a situation where the government does not stop its citizens to buy goods and services from abroad or sell goods and services in foreign countries. However, free trade is a rare phenomenon. Governments usually actually try to control what their citizens can buy or sell abroad through interventions in free trade with the instruments of trade policy. The instruments that government use to intervene in trade policy can broadly be classified under the following two heads. First one is the tariff barriers. Second is the non-tariff barriers. Tariff barriers refer to the tax imposed by the government on goods that are imported to the country. Tariffs collected by the exporting country are called export tariffs. If they are collected by a country through which the goods have passed, they are transit tariffs. Those collected by importing countries are called import tariffs. Since import tariffs are common to all, we discuss import tariffs in detail. Tariff border ba- Tariff barrier increases the price of imported goods in comparison to domestic goods, which makes the imported goods costlier, giving the domestic goods a relative advantage over foreign goods. Thus, they help the domestic government in reducing imports. In case of India, the cheap imports of refined oil have hit the domestic vegetable oil producing industry hard, with capacity utilization of this sector dropping to 30 to 40%. To protect the domestic producers, the Indian government levies an import duty of 10% on refined edible oil to protect the domestic processing industry and farmers. The type of tariff barriers. The tariff barriers can be divided into three types: specific tariffs, ad valorem tariffs, and compound tariffs. Specific tariffs are levied as fixed charge for each unit of goods imported. For example, rupees 10 per unit of goods imported. Ad valorem tariffs. They are levied as a percentage of the value of goods imported. For example, 10% of the value of the goods. If the value of the goods is, take for example, rupees 1000, the ad valorem tariff would be rupees 100. Compound tariff. Compound tariffs are assessed as both a specific tariff and an ad valorem tariff on the same product. What's the rationale behind imposing tariffs? So, tariffs help in raising revenues for the domestic government, especially in case of developing countries. Second, they protect the domestic producers from foreign competition. This is because it increases the prices of the foreign goods by restricting the quantity of imports coming into the country. Suppose the price of sugar in domestic market is rupees 60 per kg, while the price of imported sugar is rupees 50 per kg. In the absence of import tariffs, imported sugar would be cheaper. Consumers would be more inclined to buy the imported sugar. Now, let us suppose that the domestic government levy an import tariff of rupees 20 per kg, the imported sugar would become costlier, as a result of which there would be demand of domestic sugar. Next, non-tariff barriers refer to any government regulation, policy or procedure other than a tariff that has the impact of minimizing imports. Non-tariff barriers can be of two types. One that have direct influence on the price of the goods being imported, and the other that influences or control the quantity of the goods being imported. So there are two, that is direct price influences and subsidies. Subsidies are the direct payments made by the government to domestic producers. It can take form of cash payments, low interest loans, government participation in ownership, tax incentives, etc. Subsidies help in lowering down the cost of production of domestic goods, as a result of which the prices also come down. It helps domestic producers to capture export markets by making their products cheaper in international markets. It also helps the domestic producers to compete against cheaper imported goods in domestic markets. Another consequence of such subsidies is to create surplus production. That surplus is then sold in international markets, where the extra supply depresses the prices, making it much harder for producers in the developing world to sell their output at a profit. Agriculture is one of the greatest beneficiaries of subsidies in most countries. Many developed nations like Japan, European Union, United States, Canada, and many other countries are giving huge subsidies to their farmers. Outside of agriculture, subsidies are much lower, but they are still significant. However, the problem with subsidies is that it requires expenditure on part of the domestic government. It is because of this reason that developing countries find it difficult to grant subsidies to their producers as compared to their foreign counterparts because of lack of resources. The government might have to choose between imposing a tariff on competing imports or directly subsidize the industry concerned. A tariff would raise the domestic price of imports and the domestic consumers have to pay the higher price. But if a subsidy is used, the domestic price would still be less and the subsidy received by the domestic industry would allow it to compete with the foreign goods at a competitive price in global markets. Thus, subsidy becomes a better choice when the governments do not want the consumers to pay more, but at the same time enables its domestic producers to capture global markets. Export subsidies, however, under the WTO agreement are treated as fair trade practice. The importing countries counter such subsidies by levying countervailing duties on imported goods so as to offset the impact of these subsidies. This helps in protecting domestic producers from unfair foreign competition. The second is quantity controls. Under that, first one is quotas. Quota is the most traditional and common method of non tariff barriers. It refers to the direct restriction on the quantity of goods that can be imported into a country during any period of time. In other words, quotas limit the quantity of imports of any particular commodity coming into a country during a certain period of time. The quotas help the government to reduce the consumption of any particular commodity in the country. This is normally done through giving import licenses to the importers. For example, the US has a quota on cheese imports. India has a quota on import of gold. Sometimes government may use tariff rate quotas according to which a certain quantity of goods enter the country duty free or at a low rate. However, there is a very high rate of tariff for subsequent imports. The difference between quotas and tariffs uh, in- the difference between the quotas and tariff is quota increase the prices of the goods just as tariffs do. But while tariff is a source of revenue for the government, quotas do not provide any revenue. In fact, quotas generate revenue for those companies which have the licenses to import the limited quantity of goods by increasing the prices in the absence of any competition. Second, voluntary export restraints VER. VERs are bilateral agreements instituted to restrain the rapid growth of exports of specific goods. Essentially, the government of country X asks the government of country Y to reduce its company's export to country X voluntarily to help the importing country X to protect its domestic industry. One of the most famous examples of VER is a limitation of auto exports to the US enforced by Japanese automobile producers in 1981. The effect of VERs is similar to that of quota, whereby there is an increase in the price of imported goods for consumers because of limited supply of imported goods. In the above example, the VER increased the price of limited supply of Japanese imports. According to a study by US Federal Trade Commission, the US consumers had to pay $5 billion extra due to this VER. The third is local content requirement. A local content requirement is a requirement that some fraction of the product must be produced locally or in the domestic market. The requirement can either be expressed in physical terms or in value terms. Thus, it ensures that if any company wants to contract from the government agency, it must ensure that at least a certain portion of the product must be produced or procured locally. For example, the Jawaharlal Nehru National Solar Mission launched by the Indian government in 2010 requires that 75% of the solar equipment for all supported projects must be locally made. This clause has been incorporated by India to protect the domestic solar industry against imports from China and the US, since both these countries offer cheaper loans to Indian projects to buy their equipment. It is important to note that solar manufacturers in China and the US receive substantial state subsidies and loan guarantees from their governments. The fourth one is the buy local legislation. Under this form of trade policy, the government makes its purchases from the domestic producers only. This legislation forbids the government departments to make use of imported goods. However, the government may at times permit the use of imported products only if the price is below than that of the domestic producer. This instrument is widely used by developing countries to develop and broaden their manufacturing base. In case of developed countries, this measure aims to protect local jobs and industry from foreign competition. The economic effect of local content requirement and buy local legislation is same as that of quota. It limits foreign competition, thereby benefiting the domestic producers. The restriction on imports raise the price of goods for the consumers. Other non-tariff barriers. First one, labeling and testing standards. Some countries require that goods entering into their boundaries must meet certain requirements in terms of packaging, labeling, and testing standards. Such countries allow sale of only those goods which satisfy these standards. These standards require that companies must indicate on its products the name of the country where it is made, or the packaging of the goods must indicate the raw material used in its production. All these requirements add to the production cost of the company. Testing standards require the testing of products coming from foreign countries to be tested in domestic laboratories so as to ensure their quality. Labeling and testing standards are insisted upon for the ensuring quality of goods seeking an access to into the domestic markets, but many countries use them as protectionist measures. Some measures are complex and discriminatory barriers to international trade. At the same time, they are one of the most difficult ones to control as compared to other barriers of trade. The second is sanitary and phytosanitary measures. SPS measures are taken to protect against risks linked to food safety, animal health, and plant protection, or to prevent or limit damage within the territory of a country from the entry, establishment, and spread of pests from a foreign country. The SPS agreement under the WTO seeks to lay down the minimum sanitary and phytosanitary standards that the member countries must achieve for international trade of food products. This is to ensure the safety of life and health of humans, animals, and plants. However, countries actually lay down more stringent SPS norms. This at times is done to decrease the imports coming into the country. Developing countries have for long maintained that these standards can be and are being used as trade barriers against them. This practice has an adverse impact on their exports. The most common complaint is that the standards are set very high and often unreasonably so. It is in fact contended that the standards are strategically kept at high levels so that exports from the developing countries can be banned. For example, Indian meat and poultry products faced such standards imposed by European Union and United States. Next, specific permission requirements. This measure requires that potential importers or exporters secure permission from governmental authorities. This involves the issuing of import or export licenses, which may be costly and time consuming. Fourth, counter trade. The exchange of goods with goods between countries is referred to as counter trade. This practice is common in case of aerospace and defense industries whereby the importer country may not have enough foreign currency to pay for imports. Next, administrative barriers to trade. Administrative barriers to trade are a special category of non tariff barriers, and their main sources are administrative regulations and procedures that have a restrictive effect on international trade. These trade barriers can take form of legal barriers or procedural barriers. Legal barriers are caused by different laws and administrative regulation in domestic economies. Procedural barriers are related to trade procedures and they include all activities, practices, and formalities involved in international movement of goods. Delays may be made with respect to issue of licenses, customs valuation, and clearance of consignment of goods and so on. These type of barriers are most difficult to monitor and eliminate as compared to other tariff and non-tariff barriers. Thank you.